More data this week on YouTube's move to the big screen. Ad attention metrics are spread throughout the day. Cable TV networks are downsizing and more. Listen on.
Welcome to this week's edition of Inside the Stream. This is Will Richmond from Video News, and Colin Dixon is with me from N-Screen Media. Hi there, Colin. How is everything there? It must be cooler out there on the West Coast than it is in Boston today.
You do look pretty steamy and hot there, Will. You're sweating a little bit.
Oh, geez. Okay, well, I'm not that hot. It's not that awful. But it is, I think, the hottest day of the year here on the East Coast. I think we're hitting 90 today in Boston, so hopefully it'll cool off at some point soon. We don't like that steamy weather too much.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like, looking at the news this week, it sounds like the temperature is rising for TV providers. It looks like they've had a little bit of a reality check in the last few months that's showing up in data, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of that. We've got a bunch of stories that we're going to talk about, and several pieces of data that I think will help us see what's going on and why those TV providers are getting this reality check.
Absolutely. So YouTube has been in the news a lot. I think this may be related to the recent Newfronts presentations that they made, but you're going to kick us off with some new data from Looper Insights.
Yeah, and of course, Looper has sponsored the podcast in the past. Although we're not featuring this data because they sponsored, we're featuring this data because it's pretty interesting. And one of the things I love about this most recent Looper Insights report called How YouTube Took Over Your TV is that it looks at the impact of YouTube from two perspectives. They've sort of gone out and asked industry executives questions and the general public questions, and they're really looking at the transition of YouTube to being much more focused on longer form content. And of course, this is something that's been going on for a number of years. To give you some examples, they've been licensing premium movies and TV shows for quite a long time now. There's not a huge selection there, but there are tens of movies and TV shows which they're rotating pretty aggressively. And they added, of course, the ability to rent and buy movies through YouTube quite a while ago. And more recently, they've added primetime channels where you can subscribe to services like Paramount Plus, Stars, and AMC Plus through YouTube and watch them actually through the YouTube client. So there's been this transition towards more long-form content, which has gone right along with, of course, the growth of YouTube on the use of YouTube on TV, and we've talked about that in the past, so I won't dwell on that too much. But really what happened here with the Looper Insights is they asked industry executives and the public if YouTube was a realistic destination for long-form content. So, and in fact, what they asked the TV executives was how willing how they thought about it as a realistic destination for launching long-form entertainment such as TV series and films. And the result came back quite surprising. Will, a third said that they thought it was becoming a viable platform for premium content. And a half of the industry executives said they viewed it as a realistic destination for launching long-form content. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And viewers similarly are thinking of it as a place to go for long-form content. 2/3 say they either often or sometimes discover TV series or films on YouTube. So that was pretty interesting. And they sort of had a follow-up question, which I liked as well. They said they asked the TV executives if they were actively exploring releasing premium long-form video content on your YouTube, and doing that in preference to putting it on SVODs. And I was pretty surprised that they said 30% of TV executives said that they were actively exploring doing this. And 56% think it might work for certain types of content. And, this I think what this proves, Will, is that industry executives are really beginning to rethink the role of YouTube in people's viewing lives. And they're really beginning to believe that it is much more realistic to consider it as a TV platform. And, by extension, I think they're beginning to wake up to the fact that YouTube is a significant challenge to their SVOD businesses. And therefore, well, they better get on board, because this is increasingly the place that people are discovering that long form content. So this was very interesting, I thought. If you want to know a lot more about this report, of course, you can download the report for free from Looper Insights website. But you can also join TVOT Connect Live, which is something I'm doing with Tracy Swedlow of Tomorrow Show. And we're doing something on June 12th at 11 a.m. Pacific. And we're talking to Jeff Krieger from Looper and Jonathan Schrank from The Soul, which is a UGC provider to social media, social video sites. We're talking to them about this report. So if you want to get much more information, you can get that there. And I'll include a link to that in my posting of this. But anyway, that's what this report says. Well, it says that TV executives are really shifting their opinion on YouTube.
And, I don't think we're really all that surprised that they're doing that for all the reasons that you said. And, we know from the gauge that YouTube's share of viewing on TVs has been going up and up. It's in the number one position. I think we talked about that last week or 2 weeks ago on the podcast. So we know that YouTube is in, the pole position right now on CTVs. And I also thought, just to kind of add to what you said, that, a nice write-up from Michael Nathanson, our friend Michael Nathanson at MoffettNathanson, who interviewed Neil Mohan, who's the CEO of YouTube, recently at a conference that MoffettNathanson conducted. And just to kind of round out a little bit more, of what you said about YouTube and its priorities, Neil Mohan said really four main priorities: CTV, Shorts, Gen AI, and podcasts. In podcasts now, they've been reported to be the number one listening destination for podcast content. With Gen AI, they have initiatives for viewers, for creators, and for advertisers, just a host of different things. And Neil Mohan said they've been actively investing in AI now for some time, and a lot of that investment is now starting to bear fruit. Importantly, on Shorts, it sounds like monetization, it's up 20% in Q1, and monetization is on a par now with mainstream YouTube. So a lot of really interesting stuff happening at YouTube. And Michael said that if YouTube was a standalone company, it would have a valuation between $500 and $700 billion at this point. So pretty nice increase from when Google bought YouTube for $1.6 billion, a little less than 20 years ago, right?
That was definitely a good investment. So, I'm still evaluating how well the shorts work on TV. I do see them there, and we do occasionally watch them, but I tend to see them more sort of passing through for longer form content rather than those super short pieces. But I guess we'll have to see. But anyway, there are other signs that TV executives are getting their reality check on the traditional TV industry, right?
Yeah, for sure. And we've been following for some time the story now of traditional cable TV networks and their corporate ownership, and how these different companies are kind of positioning themselves for the post-cable era, if you will. And so this week we had some news that Warner Brothers Discovery has initiated some further, in their cable TV division, some further layoffs. Sounds like fewer than 100 people, but they have been not very ambiguous about, sounds like their intention to spin off or separate the cable TV networks, the linear networks, from the rest of the company at some point in the near future. That would follow, of course, what NBC Universal did with Versant, the Versant spinoff that's underway right now, with most of the cable TV networks, I think maybe with the exception of Bravo, being split off from NBC Universal. And then in addition to that, we've also seen Disney, not clear yet what they're doing, but they also not long ago laid off several hundred employees within their film and TV businesses. So Disney is also, sounds like they're trimming in an effort to try to improve the look of the TV and film business, possibly as a precursor to a spinoff. So to your point earlier, we see a lot of the major corporate entities that own cable TV networks, traditional cable TV networks, which for so long were the lifeblood of the industry, now positioning them to spin those channels off because they're obviously a lot less profitable in a world where we've seen a lot of cord cutting and we've seen a lot of viewership, as we talked about a minute ago, move over to streaming, whether it's YouTube, Netflix, or wherever.
Yeah, and I think that definitely makes a lot of sense doing that, because really, if you're going to have a business at all, you need to be 100% focused on your digital businesses, your direct-to-consumer businesses these days, if you're going to have a chance of maintaining your business going forward. There's no question about that, Will. Funnily enough, not everybody is laying off. I noticed that there was a piece this week that said that MSNBC was actually looking to hire 100 journalists as part of their spin-off, because MSNBC is of course being spun off into this new business called Versant, which is where all the cable TV assets are really going. So it's not all bad news, but I remember we were wondering how MSNBC would manage with their NBC News sort of attached to it, which is staying, I think, within NBC proper, is not being spun out into this business. So I guess there's part of the answer. They're hiring more journalists, but I suspect that there'll still be a relationship with the broader NBC News going forward.
Yeah, I agree with you. And so let's move on to our next story, Colin, some research from Magna and Roku that we both were keeping an eye on this week.
Yeah, this is some pretty interesting research, and I'm actually going to cherry pick a couple of pieces from this. So the report itself is called TV Attention Deconstructed. And as you said, Will, it's from Magna and Roku. And you can get it from, I think, both of their websites. It's available if you dig around from both of their websites. And I'm going to start off, as I say, I'm going to jump around a little bit in the report to stay sort of on our general theme of TV broadcasters getting a reality check. And one of the reality checks that folks are getting, I think, are that really I think one of the defining things about traditional cable, traditional pay TV, was primetime. Primetime was supreme, and being in primetime was essential if you wanted to get your advertisement seen by the maximum number of people. The popularity of primetime content was obviously critical. The bigger audience you got, the more advertising revenue you got for that content. And well, this data from Magna and Roku really shows that in the streaming world, primetime means very little. And what they looked at visual ad attention as a percentage. And what they saw was whether somebody was watching on free streaming TV or paid streaming TV. So whether they were watching an ad-supported stream or show on free or paid streaming, that visual ad attention was pretty much constant across all day parts. There was a small dip in the morning, but basically it hovered between 25 and 30% throughout the day. And that was, I thought, really interesting, showing that people seemed, when they come in to watch in streaming, they're really coming deliberately in to watch, and they're watching and they're paying attention. And so the ads that accompany what's being viewed really retain the interest and get the viewers' attention. So that's one thing. If you're an advertiser, you certainly don't need to worry now about day part. You just need to worry about that you're reaching the right person with your ad, which I think is good news for the advertisers. The other thing was that they compared ad performance in repeats. So, you get lift when a viewer is exposed to an ad multiple times. And they compared the performance of that lift in visual ad attention between streaming TV and traditional TV. So what they found was, in traditional TV, if you saw a repeat of an ad that you had just seen 2 hours after the first exposure, you got a 1 point increase in visual ad attention. And if you saw that ad 24 hours after that first exposure, you got a 3 point increase. So definitely you should wait. That's telling you that you should wait before you get that ad repeat, because you're going to get a better performance. But listen to this. The performance you get in streaming TV is way better. If they see the ad repeated after 2 hours, you get 2 points versus the 1 point in traditional TV. But in 24 hours, you get a 6 point increase in visual ad attention. So that really shows that streaming TV performs much better, that people appear to be paying more attention to the ads in streaming TV than they are in traditional TV. And what this says to me, Will, is that lower frequencies, keeping ad loads reasonable and lower as they are in streaming TV, you just get much better attention to them. People don't tune them out because they're not happening all the time. They pay more attention. So I thought that was pretty interesting data, and there's definitely a bunch more information in this Magna Roku report, and both of us will include a link to that report in our postings.
And completely agree with your point there, Colin, about fewer ads leading to higher attention. That is, as you said, really been a hallmark of the ad-supported tiers in streaming, is that lower ad load. And to the extent that the ads have some targeting as well, it makes the ad experience so much more pleasing than when we've seen traditional ad loads on broadcast and cable TV networks. So no surprise that there's a positive impact from attention gains with the lower ad loads, less frequency.
You bet. And we've got one more story, which is not necessarily directly related to our main theme of TV providers getting the reality check, although it is tangentially related, right?
It is. And of course, what's a Inside the Stream podcast without mentioning something about sports streaming, right? So here we
you kind of got to.
I feel like if we were to map our most common themes, that sports streaming would be right up there at the top, if not certainly in the top three. But anyway, this week's story on sports streaming was, we both noted that Fubo and DAZN have partnered up on a multi-year partnership that is basically kind of like a cross-licensing deal, where each entity is going to be distributing the other's content. So it sounds like, if I'm understanding it correctly, Fubo will now include DAZN's boxing and MMA events, exclusive boxing and MMA events, through a new linear channel that's launched called DAZN 1. And subscribers to Fubo can subscribe to DAZN 1 either as in a part of the Fubo MVPD product, or as a standalone subscription. So we've got Fubo distributing DAZN content, and then conversely, we have DAZN now distributing Fubo Sports' FAST channel that includes 400 different live sporting events per year, and also includes sports documentaries and movies. So the company's positioned this really as the first part of an integrated, quote-unquote, integrated partnership, which is going to have additional components going forward. And I think that this, again, fits with our themes we've repeated many times, that more sports is coming to streaming all the time, and it sounds like two players here that are pretty well entrenched in that market are finding an opportunity to help one another.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Will. And the interesting thing here is that the DAZN channels, this is exclusive to the US. So if you wanted to watch the boxing and the MMA fights that are being carried by DAZN 1, you couldn't in the US. And now you can, and you can actually come and subscribe just to DAZN 1 through Fubo. You don't actually have to have a subscription to Fubo's main offering. So that I think is a pretty interesting development. And one of the things I love about this, Will, is it really illustrates that Fubo and David Gandler, who we've had on the podcast, they're really staying close to what has got them to where they are. And that is, they are the only truly sports-focused traditional or pay TV solution out there. And I honestly don't know why there aren't more vMVPDs that have really gone to carve out a specific part of the audience rather than just following the traditional model of pay TV and offering general stuff. The only other one I can think about is Philo. Philo's really ignored sports, ignored news, and really just gone over after entertainment. And both of them seem to be doing pretty well. They both seem to be growing. Fubo now has got 1.5 million subscribers. Actually, they lost subscribers a little bit at the beginning of 2025. But looking at their numbers, they do tend to go up and down a little bit, but the general trend is up. And Philo's up to 1.3 million subscribers as well. So this idea of sort of carving out a particular audience that you want to super serve, I think, is a really strong one. And Fubo's going after it with sports. I mean, really, if you want to watch sports and you like sports a lot, then Fubo's the service to get, because there's a heck of a lot of sports through it. So more power to them.
I agree. And I think that's all we have for this week. We covered a lot of ground, as always.
We always do.
And so we'll leave it at that, Colin. Good chatting. And listeners, thanks everybody for joining us this week on Inside the Stream. And we will see you all again next week. Inside the Stream is a production of In-Screen Media and Video News. All rights reserved.